Hey everybody, Erin from the Impatient Gardener, and you guys have such a special guest in my garden today. This is Jim from HortTube. You guys probably follow him on his channel, and if you're not, you should. Jim, welcome to Wisconsin.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's beautiful up here. I took 20 degrees off my
Right.
day to day.
Right.
It's perfect.
So Jim, tell me about what zone you're in. You're in 7B, is that right?
We're in 7B, but we're inside the city of Raleigh in a very urban space, so probably 8A.
Okay.
So we're right on the edge.
So tell me a little bit about, now that you've spent, about a day or a little bit of time
Yeah.
up here, tell me a little bit about some of the differences that you see between our two zones.
The perennials get out of the ground just as fast here because they got such a short season. It seems like they have it figured out.
Yeah.
But your shrubs are definitely, as much as a month and a half or 2 months behind. Some of your annuals, like your poppies, are at least 2 months behind.
Yeah.
And of course, I think the biggest thing is I look around this garden, it's stunning, and beautiful. Probably more than half of our stuff's evergreen. Where you're probably in the 10 to 15% range, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And so in the wintertime, we can continue to have, color.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Are you seeing some of the same plants that were, in my garden that you have in your garden?
Yeah, tons. I mean, there's, and definitely, of course, the annuals we can all grow, but the perennials, the shrubs, most of it. I mean, the spruces, there's some conifers. We're conifer deficient.
Yeah.
And then of course everybody wants them. Everybody wants what you can't have.
Always.
In gardening, that's the way it is. We're conifer deficient, but other than that, it's pretty similar.
Okay.
And a lot of this stuff, I'll say in plant breeding, one thing is we get these plants that are zone 5 to 9. And maybe that plant across its range where the person started breeding, like something like clethra. If they were breeding with ones that were in zone 6 or 5 when they started with them, they may not be that heat tolerant for us, or they're subspecies across the range.
Right.
And so I think that's one thing. When you see a plant zone 5 to 9, I always go, is it?
Yeah.
That's a hard range to cover.
Yeah, so you come from a background of the nursery business.
Yeah.
So what is your advice to people who are in a different zone, and maybe somebody from who lives near me sees something on your channel and says, "Oh, well, it's hardy here." Like, what is your advice in terms of helping people to find a plant that's really going to work for them?
My thing is always go to botanic gardens, go to arboretum, join a gardening club in your area, go to visit. You'll be amazed how many friends you can make. The only thing you can bang on somebody's door for is gardening.
Yeah.
As soon as you say garden, your instant friends,
Right.
It's the only, like I say, only thing you can knock on somebody's door for,
Yeah.
nothing else.
Yeah.
Or cookie, maybe Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah, right.
That's it. So they're, go into local garden center. Garden center is not necessarily helpful because they're trying to sell you something.
Yeah.
In this regard.
Right.
And everybody has great garden centers, but they are still at the end of the day trying to sell you something. So go to arboretums, go to places, and then be experimental. And be experimental. Don't spend a fortune being experimental, but if you can do something from seed, if you can get a friend, if you're visiting someone in some place, get a friend to dig you a piece out. I forever carting things home or giving something away to somebody, and just try it without breaking the bank.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe don't invest in 5 of that plant right now. Grow one a little
Right.
bit and test it out. I do that all the time when I'm
Right.
pushing a zone or something. I'll go in for a penny, but not quite for the pound.
Right, yeah. But the other thing is, good gardeners. If you see any of my tour videos on my channel or your channel, this one thing I talk frequently about is you don't have to break the bank on bed prep and those things either. I mean, you're using, very simple organic materials of compost and bark and leaves and wood chips, which you can get for free.
Yep.
And I'm doing the exact same thing. So that part doesn't change.
Right.
I can go to any garden in America and on what I consider on a high level, and I'm not putting myself in that category. I'm
Right.
putting other people that I visit
Right.
in that category, and it's the same. They're not letting anybody sell them other things. They're not being sold to. They keep the ground covered and then they just plant thick.
So, Jim, one of the things I love about your channel is you visit so many amazing gardens and amazing gardeners.
Yeah.
And so you've really just got so many great garden tours on your channel. But tell me a little bit, now that you've been going into all these gardens, like what are some design lessons that you take away in general from all the great gardens that you've seen?
Rooms are
Yeah.
one of the things about cutting the space into rooms. My lot doesn't. The house is centered on a 0.19 acre lot.
Yeah.
So I do have one back line that I've kind of screened out, but I can't really do, a slightly larger lot like yours allows you to cut things into rooms. And to think about using your mid-level shrubs as the centers of the beds and not the back of the beds. And so, not against the house, obviously,
Right.
but out in an open
Right.
space, so
Right.
that somebody has to go around to look at the other side.
And even in a
Yes.
in a small kind of smaller lot like you
Yes,
have.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. But I've got one buddy in my neighborhood whose house happens to sit a little further back on the property, and he's cut his into 5 or 6 rooms, and yours is the same way. And some of your your shrubs are maturing, I can see that this will be that kind of space. It's gorgeous, it's perfect.
Yeah.
But that's one of the main things. That
Yeah.
this one step higher level
Yeah.
is to think about it as creating mystery. You don't get to see it all by riding by it.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So when you go into all these great gardens, I mean, what do you take? I mean, do you make changes in your garden because of things that you see happening other places?
I gain plants from them. That's what I typically always end up carting something home. And so I would say that my garden is different, truly different than other people's gardens, is that I want every plant to have a story. And so there's some things currently in that garden that I consider as fillers until I find the thing. So I basically want to go around the garden and say, this professor gave this to me, this garden tour I was at, this visit with this person, this,
Right.
you know what I mean? That's what I want my garden
Right.
to be. And so every plant has a story.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit now? Your garden that we're talking about here. I hope you guys you're probably familiar with it, but if you're not, you should check it out. Now, this has come together quickly. How long have you been in this house that you're gardening at now?
About a little over 2 years, just a hair over 2 years.
Yeah, and I mean the garden is beautiful and filling in. So
Yeah.
this is really interesting that you're talking about plants that are sort of placeholders
right.
until you find that right plant.
Yeah.
So instead of leaving that space empty,
Yeah.
you're putting something there for the time being.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And just kind of deciding as I go that something in the future is going to have to come out to make space. One thing I'll say is a lot of people, this is one question I get, is how in the world could you do that in 2 years?
Yeah.
And the answer is wood chips. It's just such a simple thing. I covered the ground in wood chips and then I waited 6 months. Don't plant in them directly. There's
Yeah.
some, that can be, you can get some
Right.
failure from that.
Right.
But if you let them break down for some period of time, I think what it is about that wood fiber is it's actually harder for the soil microbes to break it down. So they go into,
Like
this
overdrive.
overdrive,
Yeah.
and it wakes your soil up, and the worms start carrying these things down into the
Yeah.
deeper soil, and
Yep.
and holy heck, I mean, just everything goes wild in it.
Yeah. Okay, so you have spent obviously a long time. How many years have you been in sort of the horticulture world?
Since I was 16.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
so
farm-
like
and farm
so
experience
like
before
10
that.
years then?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, a long time. 36 years in what I would call horticulture, and then forced agriculture. When you're younger.
Got it.
Yeah, forced agriculture.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would you say is some advice that say the average home gardener, what's
Right.
something people can do in their own gardens that levels them up or helps
Right.
them create a better garden?
But no more straight lines. That's the biggest. Your house is square. Your sidewalks typically square. I wish they would curve sidewalks a little further out from houses, but they don't. Your garage is square, or your sidewalk, your driveway. Everything is angular.
Right.
And that's just not the way nature works. So in order to kind of fix our how modern housing looks, curves are the main thing, and carrying curves across things. So don't think about your driveway as being a border. Think of it, beds carrying through to the other side, curves carrying through to the other side, and lay out your beds. I think the order of things in that new house, and I shot the videos this way, was the bed layout was number one. I wanted to know kind of what, things change. Things change. I have a piece of turf in the back garden that's going away.
Yeah.
So things can change, but overall, just the general curves and shapes of things is kind of important to know going into it, because that allows you to plant your bones your bigger pieces that are the pieces that are going to stay.
Right.
The pieces that you know are going to stay have to, kind of have to go in early, and then the rest is experimental. Do things from seed, do things, things that are more, to me, are more rewarding.
Yeah.
If you start something from a seed and you finish it in your garden, these poppies or whatever it is, that was what will get you really addicted to this. You know what I mean? Like, whoa, I did that from this little teeny tiny thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you've done the whole process.
You've done the whole
Absolutely.
process.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah. I'm a big, this is another just recommendation, is lawn with a purpose. Lawn has to have a purpose. If you have young kids, have all the flat lawn space you can have, because they can let them play and let them play. But at some point you have to question, why am I mowing this?
Right.
It has to have some purpose. You have maybe you have pets, whatever it is. Determine if that lawn doesn't have a purpose and it just keeps you enslaved on a Saturday, behind a lawnmower.
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
Yeah.
And there are low maintenance plants. People, I think, in their minds think that these types of things are more maintenance than this.
Yeah.
But I think if you added up the 30 times a year you're mowing,
Yeah.
you'll see that this is actually less maintenance.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Now, I thought the other thing I wanted to ask you about was, is there something you've seen here that you would want to take home to your garden, or sort of recommend that people, because I think a lot of people are going to go, okay, these people are almost 3 garden zones away. What really carries over between the two?
Right.
So is there a specific plant or something here that you've seen that you might apply more to, say, people who live near you?
I would say there's more movement in this garden. I have probably not thought through in my design process. It's all been about interesting plants, but this garden, as I look around it, even now with a very light breeze, things are moving. There's taller growing perennials that are moving, poppies, grasses, and I think mine is a bit rigid.
Right.
If I was to stand there right now and look at it and go, it's beautiful, but nothing moves.
Right.
And so probably some grasses, some taller growing perennials, because I tend to shy away from them just because of the lot size. But I think if I reduce the lawn again, I can put a layer, back here. But I'm looking at that thinking that I really enjoy standing in here and seeing everything move.
So let's go the reverse of that. What's something that you are familiar with from your zone that you think I should consider bringing into my garden?
I haven't seen a clethra that would certainly work up here, just because I love the bees, love the fall color, love and there's so many great ones. What else would be a zone 5 thing from my garden? You have a lot of the same things I have. You just have a version, your viburnum or zone 5 viburnum, my viburnum, or some are 8 and 9.
Exactly.
Viburnum. So there's really, you have a lot of it, a tremendous amount of it covered. And really, I think if someone came to your garden, they're in zone 5, they're in, I don't care where they are, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, wherever they are. If they came here, I think that they would be like, you can do this?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people sitting in your zone that probably have no idea that you can have this much color and it be kind of a year-round garden.
I think it's interesting, though, because I think we tend to think that we can only really learn from gardens in our zone. And that might be true for some things. But I think there's more crossover than we think there is. At least if you're in this, let's say, zone 4 to zone 8 or 9. There's a lot more in common than there is difference.
When you're talking about, I looked at this garden in Florida, and they had this purple thing and this yellow thing and this green thing. Yeah. Well, there's a purple thing and a yellow thing and a green thing for you.
Exactly.
It's just not that purple thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Think in a broader way, so that how can I apply this to my space? And then, of course, I know you're big, as you mentioned, you like going to local botanic gardens or gardens near you. And that's where you can kind of dial in what might that purple thing be, or what might that green thing be. Right. And then you can really get into more specifics. But I think we all have more things in common than we have different in our gardens. Yeah.
And that definitely overlaps. And again, back to that thing I've talked about it being At the end of the day, it's just about keeping the soil covered in organic material and trying things.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be overcomplicated.
Yeah, exactly. We tend to do a really good job sometimes overcomplicating things.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and it's
right.
really not necessary to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, thank you for coming up here.
Awesome.
Thank you
This
for
has been
visiting.
awesome. This has been
You guys,
awesome.
Jim's going to have some videos on his channel. So make sure you check that out. I'm sure you guys are already following Jim, but if you don't, links in the description below to find Jim in all the places. And thanks so much for watching, everybody. Thanks, Jim, for coming.
Thank you.
All right.
Love it.
Bye, everybody.